name's Raf Naboa. I basically decided to jump up here because Dave was over in Balad Air Base, and my unit, 1st Battalion, 8th Infantry, at the time, 3rd Brigade, 4th Infantry Division, which was where 1-8 was, we were the guys that took over Balad Air Base back in 03 and 04. Well, at the time, 03. You know, I was really lucky. My name's Raf Naboa, by the way, if I didn't get that across. I was really lucky because I only did one tour in Iraq, and I was there from April of 03 through March of 04. And a lot of guys will say it was the best of times and it was the worst of times, all bound up in one. You know, it was the best of times because, you know, if you're a combat arms kind of guy like I was a forward observer for artillery, you're actually doing your job. But it was the worst of times because by the time 4th ID kind of crossed the border, they didn't have any idea what they were going to do with us, because when we were planning out the war, 4th ID was supposed to come down north of Iraq from Turkey, except that the Bush administration, in their infinite wisdom, ticked off the Turks, who were a NATO ally. So then the Turks didn't want to go ahead and let us use their bases to go through northern Iraq. So we ended up having to go follow everybody else up MSR-1. MSR-1's, if you look at a map of Iraq, you got Baghdad in the middle, and MSR-1's kind of one big road that just goes all the way through the country, right? So we ended up trailing up 3rd ID and everybody else. And so we didn't really see a whole lot of action, which meant, well, we're not going to send these guys home. We're not going to send the forward observers home. We're not going to send the infantry guys home. You know, we got to hang on to these guys. So guys like me, we ended up doing something that we weren't really trained up for, which was civil affairs. Now, civil affairs, if you look at what the Army does, the civil affairs are the people that are supposed to be doing all the stability and sort of occupation functions, so dealing with like local government and that sort of thing. Problem was is that none of us knew Arabic. I think I might have known a little bit because my ex-wife was an Arabic studies major. She specialized, ironically enough, in Iraq. And I think I was the only guy that had a little bit of knowledge about the area, the whole country. Everybody else is just like, hey, we're just cannon cockers. We're just, you know, forward observers. You know, we don't know what we're doing. But they weren't going to send us home, so they, you know, they slotted us to civil affairs. So we were running all over the country. We, you know, went through Babylon. We headed up to the Iranian-Iraqi border, and, you know, tried to figure that whole mess kind of out. There was a sort of group called the Mujahideen at Kalk, and they were officially classified as terrorists because they were sort of Muslim communists. The rank and file was men, but they were led by women, and we ended up having to repatriate them to Iran, which really was kind of funny because, and I don't mean funny, I mean funny strange, only because we had, through the CIA, you know, provided them with arms and support, you know, for about a good 10-15 years. And so we ended up being forced to repatriate these guys, these women, over to Iran. And so from there, you know, we went off across to Kirkuk, and that was a whole mess. And my biggest memory of the whole time that I spent there was just that, yeah, I felt like that. I felt like crying like that little kid, honestly, you know, because it was so chaotic. You know, we didn't have any idea of what the left hand was doing, what the right hand was doing. I remember guys coming down from, I remember being in a village outside of Kirkuk, and, you know, we're talking to the local boss guy there, and he was telling us that, you know, the guy that we had, there was one guy that was supposed to be administering Iraq, and he got replaced by Bremer, and we didn't have any idea. We're just out there kind of swinging in the wind like a leaf. We're like, what? This guy, what? Bremer? Yeah, sure, yeah, we know all about Bremer, absolutely. Just Bremer guy, you know? We ended up getting these kids coming down from DC and from, you know, a lot of the, you know, the RNC and that sort of thing. And I remember Rajiv Chandrasekaran on this book, Emerald Life in Imperial Life in the Emerald City. He talks about it. I remember talking to this guy. He was about 26, maybe a year older than I was. He was absolutely convinced that he was going to go ahead and set up this electronic stock market in Baghdad. Never mind that Baghdad itself was getting like 4 hours of electricity. Maybe the rest of the country is still like about 4 or 5 hours of electricity 5 years, into our occupation there. Still, you'd think we would have figured that piece out by now, but still about 4 or 5 hours. And he's talking about how he's going to set up this, totally computerized. It's going to be just like the NASDAQ. It's going to be awesome. Just awesome, baby. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just, what are you doing, Just the whole experience was so freaking surreal to me. And I really wasn't that big of a political guy. I mean, I was aware. I grew up in a kind of political family. I mean, we voted, but I really wasn't politically oriented. I remember getting off the plane, and the song Leaving on a Jet Plane was playing on my iPod when we finally took off in March 27th of 04. I remember landing, and I figured I needed to do something. And so for 4 years, I've been sort of banging my head up against the wall, so to speak, trying to get myself taken care of. And there's so many guys out there. I mean, Rick, one of the guys, Rick Duncan over here, just kind of stroking his face there. And so many of these guys, Garett and Jeff and whatnot, we've been working and busting our behinds in order to make sure the guys are taken care of. And we're actually kind of lucky. Me, I'm luckier than most because I was able to leverage connections that, through my sheer hard work, I developed in order to get myself taken care of. But there's so many guys that are out there that are sleeping under a bridge, sleeping under the stars, and they don't have access to the things that we have access of as connected veterans, as guys that got together. And it's a doggone shame. I mean, I get people coming up and they're saying, hey, I want to thank you for your service. And I remember writing an essay about 9 months ago, just saying, like, you know what, don't thank me for my service. Get in the face of your elected representatives, get in the face of your, the people that represent you and say, why aren't you taking care of these guys? Because, you'll go to a rally or something and you'll hear somebody like, Barack Obama, or you hear somebody like Hillary Clinton, and, they'll point at the token veteran. I mean, I remember working on the Obama campaign and just being like that token veteran kind of guy, that they can bring out. And other campaigns too. And my response is like, don't thank me for my service. What are you going to do for the guys whom you are supposedly thanking? What are you going to do? What kind of acts are you going to push through? And we got lucky. We pushed out this new GI Bill, and starting in August, a lot of guys are going to be able to take care of that. But that's just the beginning. You can't commit forces. You can't commit women, and I emphasize that, women and men. I mean, Kelly Doherty, the lady who runs, is the executive director. She's a lady, and she was on the front lines. When you're an MP, a military police officer, you're on the front lines as a woman. You're getting shot, you bleed just like a guy bleeds. But these guys are getting sent over there 4 or 5 tours, maybe even a 6 if we're really unlucky, maybe even a 7th, who knows? And talking about going to Afghanistan, and that's a conversation that needs to take place. Why do we need to be in Afghanistan? What's the purpose and the mission there? If it's to capture bin Laden, do we need 10,000 guys in there to do that? Can we not do that in a different way, in a different fashion? And so, the hardest work really begins now that we have, a Congress that supposedly sees things in our way, a president that sees things in our way. In terms of holding them responsible, holding their feet to the fire, a lot of people are starting to get comfortable, and my thing is, let's not get comfortable. Let's go ahead and start holding people's feet to the fire so we can finally make sure that, these guys and me and everybody else finally know what this country's all about. We can finally partake in the promise of this country and make sure that those promises are kept. They're just not made. So, I don't know who else wants to go next. See you later.